So why bother supporting art? So I realize that I'm saying, like, I'm preaching to the choir right now. If you were unclear about why you should be supporting the arts, you probably wouldn't be here. So I'm probably gonna repeat some stuff to you that you already know, but it's super cool. What you're gonna do is you're gonna still call us in, and then you're gonna go back home to your friends who you never get to drag out to art exhibits. You're gonna go to the people who you're like, dude, why didn't you go to this cool gallery opening with me? I need you to come out and support. And you're just gonna repeat all these points to them because you guys already get it. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. Or at least I hope you wouldn't be here if you didn't get it. All right, so really simple. It's an integral part of healthy communities. If you want to find a vibrant city that is thriving, where people want to be there, you find art, you find culture, you find people who not only have the financial ability, but they have the creative ability to live and work where they can thrive. So integral part of being in any community. Also, so there's deep intrinsic value of both creating and experiencing art. If you, raise your hand if you ever did an art experience as a kid, right? Like you went to a museum on a field trip, maybe had a storyteller come to your class. For me, one of my favorite memories is we used to go to the Cincinnati Public Library in Ohio, and we would get to listen to these African storytellers tell us the Anansi fables and tell us all these really great stories. And that's a core memory for me. I can directly track what I experienced in my youth to where I am now. And I happen to be somebody who is fortunate enough to work in the arts, who considers themselves creative, but also for people, maybe your position isn't that of a working artist, maybe you're not a painter, maybe you're not a singer or a dancer, but you understand that there's deep value in both being creative and experiencing that art. So again, pretty obvious. Creativity that fuels most business sectors comes from the arts, right? When we talk about what it means to have a thriving creative economic sector, we are talking about creative people that oftentimes trace that creativity back to a core arts experience. If you go into any room with designers, engineers, people that work on multi-million-dollar campaigns, I guarantee you are going to find gamers, you're going to find people who are on improv teams, you're going to find people who their favorite dates are getting coffee and then going to their local art museum to see the latest exhibit. You're going to find people, much like myself, who see the value in purchasing artwork from artists who are still with us, which is, I know, an integral mission of this organization and one that I think is truly valuable. The other thing why you should bother supporting it is that it's incredibly important for healing hearts, minds, and bodies. I don't know about you guys, but for the past 2 years, we've been kind of going through a thing. Some people might want to call it, a pandemic, a panini, a panorama, what have you, but the shit's been real. And one of the best ways that we have to address the fallout from that, the psychological trauma, the emotional, the physical trauma, art is going to be at the center of that. However, if the people who are responsible for making those moments for healing and connection can no longer live in the cities that need them the most, then we're never going to get beyond this extremely traumatic, monumental experience we all have just gone through. Lastly, it's a civic responsibility. If you go to any downtown core, any business where there are bars and there are restaurants, there are dozens of studies that you can look through for the Americans for the Arts, for local economic councils that directly show a correlation between people that have outings at artistic and cultural events and the income that goes into those businesses. We've all kind of heard the idea that when you have a city like Seattle where there's such a huge tech boom, where you have these multi-million-dollar companies, you have a lot of transplants. And one of the biggest questions that we try and ask ourselves in the creative and nonprofit sector is how do you get a bunch of people who aren't from here, who move here for prosperity, for opportunity, to see themselves as a part of this community? Well, I personally think one of the ways that we do that is that we create more events like this. We create more spaces like this where everybody can see themselves as a part of the cultural fabric of any community. All right, so challenges facing individual artists, and again, one of the reasons why organizations like Living Artists Collective is so integral is that artists in this city in particular, in Seattle, in King County, as a reminder, King County is probably the third largest county in Washington State, and we are one of the wealthiest. We probably have one of the highest homelessness rates. We have a huge lack of affordable housing. Again, the mission of LAC is that they support low-income artists. There's a reason why this organization is needed. Affordable childcare. Not every artist is a single 20-something. Some artists step into their craft when they're in their 50s or when they're in their 40s. They're single moms or dads, they're aunties, they're folks who need help with childcare, adult care, and our system is not set up to care for those people. Other challenges. Stable income, access to healthcare, and generally speaking, community support. And I don't mean the kind of community support that's sort of generic and we all understand, like, oh yeah, community support. I'm talking about the real deep community support where people feel needed and cared for and they know that they have a place. And Seattle, I can say, is one of those cities, despite the wealth that is here, despite the massive amount of resources that we have and the brain power, we are seriously lacking in really essential things that artists, creative workers, cultural producers need in order to live and work here. But in the post-pandemic world, really understanding how these things impact those who are most vulnerable and then figuring out creative solutions to them is going to be how we make Seattle an extremely vibrant place, how we make King County a really incredible place to be, and I genuinely believe organizations like LAC are gonna get us there. So meeting those challenges, so more institutional support. 4Culture being one of them, we provide, I think, really incredible support to individual artists and organizations, both at the operational level and project-based level, but we can only do so much and we are restricted to King County. Office of Arts and Culture, local arts agencies, so your local arts commissions, your arts councils, they oftentimes have the ability to support, but it needs to be broader, it needs to be honestly just deeper. There's way more money out there than is getting into the hands of people that need it, and it's a lot of red tape, and that's been the very interesting thing that I've been observing in my new little county job. I've been there about a year, and so that's been like my little shockers, like, surprise, there's bureaucracy in government. Also investing in affordable housing and access to health care, individual investments in the arts, both social and monetary. So this is what I'm talking about, you guys and your friends. If you do not have a practice of giving, of philanthropy, I would highly suggest that you reevaluate what that looks like in the future. If you look at the way philanthropy has developed, so the act of giving, how we choose to support our community, it is very different on the East Coast than it is on the West Coast for a load of reasons. Also, depending on your cultural background, how you give, how philanthropy works might be different. But the fact remains, because we live in a capitalist society, because we are in the nonprofit industrial complex, philanthropy is one of the ways in which artists are able to support themselves. So if you do not have a personal giving practice, I would highly, highly suggest you examine why that is, and if you could change it, what would it look like? I'm not saying you gotta write somebody into your will, although that is helpful. And if you don't have a will, get one, because if you don't, the state of Washington will take your shit, FYI. Just like for young people, I know we don't like to talk about that, but like, straight up, get a will if you don't have one. Lastly, I know, right? You're getting all kinds of knowledge. Last one, share community value and understanding. So, you guys know why art is valuable. You understand why it's important. There's an intrinsic value to art. You've experienced it. We got to experience it up here. We saw some dope-ass people up here sharing their work with us. You get it. But there are lots of people, for a lot of reasons, who either are blocked from experiencing that intrinsic value, or they're oftentimes told that that intrinsic value actually isn't as valuable as they think. That there are other things that should be held above that.